And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I'm at it again. We're talking about some more legendary creatures from Dominaria United. We're going to be getting a ton on this set for sure, so I'm going to be cranking out one of these videos almost every single day, and I'm really grabbing the legendary creatures. You know, this is a first reaction for me, but I look at the ones whose names I recognize because, of course, we're getting a lot of that. So if I recognize a name, I'm going to grab that one because I want to talk about it because I think, you know, I really like the nostalgia of it for me. Seeing all these old legendary creatures that are sort of getting reprinted is really, really fun. So we're going to start out this time with Braids, Arisen Nightmare. And of course, there are two Braids. The original Braids, Cabal Minion, right, was the mono black one. And then we had the mono blue Braids. The mono blue Braids is kind of, you know, it gets used in Commander, you know. I definitely have played against some mono blue Braids decks. The mono black Braids sort of famously is banned in the format, and so we've got a new mono black Braids here, and this, you know, kind of could be the reason why. So Arisen Nightmare, 1 black Nightmare 3/3, so it's a Nightmare. I'm pretty sure she was just a human before. So pretty big transformation here. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. May sacrifice. Okay. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life, and you draw a... Oh boy, that's interesting. Okay, so this really does feel like a fixed version of the mono black Braids, or a more fun version, right? So basically they took the mono black Braids that a lot of people wanted to be able to play in the format, but the rules committee, I guess, didn't like that idea. I was okay with it. And it's funny because at some point I'm going to revisit all the banned cards in the format, and Braids is one where I'm like, I would be okay with it being unbanned. A lot of people want it unbanned. It is kind of not fun. The big thing about Braids is it sacrifices lands, right? Which this one does. However, it's giving you the option, which kind of makes it... That's why I feel like it's a fixed version of the mono black Braids, because it's giving you that option. Okay, you don't want to sacrifice a land, so it's if you do. So on your end step, which I like because you're going to play it, and then immediately on your end step, you get that trigger. You don't have to wait till your upkeep. Again, that's something they've started doing specifically for the Commander format. I know that they've started doing that for the Commander format because it's just a really feel bad when I play my Commander, and then before I can get around to my next turn and actually use that at the beginning of upkeep ability, someone casts a board wiper, just removes my Commander. That just feels really bad. So it's kind of nice that I can cast my Commander, and then, you know, it's not a guarantee that I get that end step trigger, but it's kind of nice that the chances are pretty good. You know, I can see if all my opponents are tapped out, and if they are, that's a good time to cast my Commander if I want to guaranteed get that trigger. So on your end step, so now you have to sacrifice something, which again makes this a little more fair. Each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. By the way, this card is very reminiscent of one of my favorite cards, World Queller, which has a very similar ability. Very similar ability. By the way, what is the permanent type that is not on this card? Because World Queller says sacrifice a permanent. You're sacrificing an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. So why don't they just say permanent? Because these are all the permanent types, right? Weird. Because it literally is doing the exact same as World Queller. World Queller says choose a permanent type. I'm pretty sure that's what it says. One of my favorite cards. I better know what it says. And then everyone else has to choose that. Everyone has to sacrifice that permanent, right? So you have to sacrifice everyone else. This is a little different because you can't just choose a permanent type you don't have. That's what makes World Queller so great, is if you don't have any planeswalkers, you just pick planeswalker and everyone has to sacrifice one. Here you actually have to sacrifice a planeswalker. And if you can't force your opponents to sacrifice a planeswalker unless you have one to sacrifice, right? So that makes it not as good. Also, your opponents can just choose not to sacrifice and lose 2 life and let you draw a card. I like it. I like it. Again, this to me feels like a fixed version of the mono black Braids, and I think they did a great job seems very much engineered for the Commander format. This really feels to me like all the people out there that wanted to play mono black Braids in Commander, now you have a nice, little more fair fixed version of it to go after. And I think a lot of people will. Really great job. Moving on to another one that is kind of nostalgic for me, Stang Echo Warrior. And the original Stang is pretty awful. And you can kind of tell. And for those who haven't been playing Magic for long, you look at the originals, right? You look at the original Stang, and we haven't seen this one yet, but we'll take a look at it. But all I've seen now is the casting cost. The new one costs 4, the original one costs 6, right? So you can sort of see the difference in creatures, especially. I guess power creep, right? It's just how much things have changed. The original one was a 3/4, and you created a 3/4 twin token. And very early in the beginnings of making underwhelming Commander decks, when I started going down that strategy, Stang was one of the very first decks I made. And because he was so underwhelming, and I thought it was interesting to do a Gruul ETB strategy, because he does have an ETB, although not a great one. I ended up replacing Stang as the commander for that deck because he was so bad and so terrible, and it really did. I ended up not really using him. I replaced him with Dragonlord Atarka. So that is my Dragonlord Atarka deck. Was originally a Stang deck. Anyway, I'm sure you guys do want to hear about that. You want to hear about the new Stang, and so do I. Echo Warrior, and I have a feeling this is going to be similar to the original. So 2 red and a green human warrior, 3/4. So again, a 3/4. I'm pretty sure the original was also a human warrior. When Stang Echo Warrior attacks, create Stang Twin. So we are doing the twin thing, a legendary 3/4 red and green human warrior creature token. It enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. Okay. So this is not an ETB, this is an attack. I mean, you just look at the difference. It's a 3/4 creature, you're creating that twin token, but it's 4 mana instead of 6, right? For each aura and equipment attached to, and then we get a bunch of other stuff. For each aura and equipment attached to Stang, create a token that's a copy of it attached to Stang Twin. Wow. Sacrifice all tokens created this way at the beginning of the next end step. That's funny. So yeah, again, I love the flavor here where they took the original and just made it so it's not unplayable, basically, right? So now your Stang is going to attack. And of course, as I say all the time, whenever you got those attack triggers, you got to make sure, haste is great. All that kind of stuff. Wolfgar, right? Wolfgar is going to double you up. That's not going to work here though, right? Because the legendary tokens will kill each other. So that doesn't, yeah, unfortunately that's not going to work here. Unless you have Mirror Gallery. I don't know if you want to go down that road, but so you create the token, it's tapped and attacking. And of course you want, this has to be an Aura equipment deck. And now we have the whole modified thing. So you could do, and they had a whole bunch of modified stuff in Gruul. So you could do the modified theme here as well, which I just did on my Underwhelming Commanders video with Livonia Salone, of course, because Gruul, they did a lot of that in Neon Dynasty for Gruul. So you're doing Aura and equipments, which means you're doing modified. So you want a bunch of Aura and equipments on your commander. I wonder what happens if you put a Parallel Lives in here. So if you put a Parallel Lives in here, it's going to create extra token copies. Of course, the extra token copy of your Stang Twin will immediately, you'll have to choose one. For each Aura and equipment attached to Stang, create a token that's a copy of it attached to, because all of these are going to resolve at the same time, right? You're going to create the token copy of Stang, and you're going to create the token, the copies of the Aura and equipment attached to him. But I guess if he dies, it won't matter. No. Yeah, so that probably won't do anything. Again, maybe it might actually be worth it to do the Mirror Gallery thing, or the new mirror gallery from Neon Dynasty. Might actually be worth it here, because then you can do token copying, you can do Wolfgar, you can do, right? Might be worth it, maybe. Very interesting though. Again, I like how they sort of brought this into the new generation. Very nice. Moving on. All right, next up we have the ever-changing Dane. And this, some people might not have caught this, but I did. This actually is a new iteration of an old legendary creature. I believe this is Half Dane, okay? And Half Dane from the original Legend set, Esper Commander. I believe it was a shapeshifter, but it was like a very minimal shapeshifter, not a great one. it would just grab the power and toughness of another creature. So not a great shapeshifter. I believe this is a new iteration of that guy. Pretty sure it is. So white, a blue, and a black. So again, another Esper commander, shapeshifter, 3/3. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature. The ever-changing Dane becomes a copy of the sacrificed creature, except it has this ability. So yeah, it is a copy effect, doing it in a very different way that I'm pretty sure we have never seen before, right? And a very, again, flavor-wise, fantastic, because really this is what clones do a lot of the time. This is a very common clone technique, which is, or doppelganger technique, which is you copy someone and then you kill the person that you're copying, obviously, right? So that nobody knows that you're copying. That's a very common technique with, shapeshifters, doppelgangers. So flavor-wise, fantastic. Obviously, sacrifice your creatures, you copy them. Okay. The great thing here is you can do this in response, so you can play like an Elishnorn, and then, of course, your opponents are going to want to get it off the table. You always leave that 1 mana open. If I'm playing this deck, I always leave that 1 mana open. So your opponent is about to path your Elishnorn. In response, you sacrifice it. Your Dane becomes an Elishnorn, right? That alone you can do. You can just do good stuff creatures with this deck. And when your opponent tries to get it off the table, you just copy it. You sacrifice it in response and copy it. Another thing you could do is steal your opponent's creatures and do that, right? Which I think a lot of people might be doing. You could do... Blue has a fair amount of stealing. Black has a few, and white actually has a few as well. Steal your opponent's creatures. Of course, you could just throw Helm of Possession in here. There's a colorless option for that, which also is sacrificing creatures. So it's a fantastic fit here. Steal your opponent's creature that you want to copy, right? Because, of course, you can only sacrifice creatures you control, for those who don't know. You steal your opponent's creature, and then you sacrifice it and turn it, make a copy of it. You could even do it with your opponent's commander, where you steal their commander, and the added bonus, of course, being you're killing their commander, so their commander goes back to the command zone. So that's pretty fantastic, too. Having a sack outlet on your commander is kind of nice. A lot you could do here. Another thing you could do is cheating. Like the black cheat stuff into play that is temporary, right? So like Goryo's Vengeance, for example, right? So Igorio's Vengeance is only 2 mana. Igorio's Vengeance, something into play. It's going to get exiled on my end step. Pretty sure that's an exile. And then I just, I think it has haste, so I bring it into play. I attack with it right away. And then before it gets exiled on my end step, I sacrifice it. Right. And now so if it's a giant creature, right? If it's a Razaketh or something, Igorio's Vengeance, that Razaketh into play, and then swing with it, and then I can sacrifice it. And now my commander is a Razaketh. So I think that's another sort of those temporary reanimate effects. Like a sneak attack effect would be great if you could sneak attack something into play, and then before it dies on the end step, you turn your commander into it. Obviously, we can't do red here, but effects like that, the temporary into play effects, Dawn of the Dead could be another one that happens every turn, right? So you could do that as well. There's a lot you could do here. Really interesting commander. All right, next up, another one that is kind of nostalgic for me, Shanna, because I have a Shanna deck, right? The white-green Shanna. This one looks like it is Bant. So Shanna, Purifying Blade, green, white, and a blue human warrior, 3/3 with lifelink. By the way, I just want to say there is a whole lot of 3-color commanders that only cost 3 mana. I've been seeing that a lot with this set, where it's just those 3 colors and that's it. So a lot of cheap commanders, which is good. I like that. I also like the fact that there hasn't been a lot of really powerful ones yet. There hasn't been any where I'm like kind of bummed out about how powerful they are. I haven't seen any. So far so good. So 3/3 with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. I have a feeling it's going to have something to do with the amount of life gained, because that's why they don't just stick. Usually when there's lifelink on a commander, there's a reason for it. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, draw X cards. Oh boy. X can't be greater than the amount of life you gain this turn. Yeah. So, jeez. So it's a well of lost dreams. Your commander is a well of lost dreams. Yeah. Interesting. Has nothing to do with the Shanna, the one that I'm Again, I don't know what the story is here. Why she cares about gaining life and drawing cards. Life gain, draw cards. Yeah, I know. There's not really much to talk about. Obviously, she's got lifelink. So you attack, you gain 3 life, and then on your end step, you can pay 3 mana and draw 3 cards. I like that they put it at the beginning of your end step, because that means you can't just. It's like a necropotence where you can't just fill your hand and then keep. So if you draw 7 cards, you can't like do it on your next play a bunch of stuff on your main phase. You're going to draw 7 cards, and then you're immediately going to go to your cleanup, and you're going to have to discard. So I guess you probably want Thought Vessel, Reliquary Tower, maybe in here. So you're not discarding to hand size. But again, and now it's something you have to build around. So I like that they did it at the end step. Yeah, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. Your commander is a well-lost dreams. So yeah, you want to gain life, and then you're going to draw cards. Pretty much it. All right, lastly today, Zera, the Golden Stang. And look at this art, is so funny. It's so weird. You seeing this bug in like a dress with a hat? That's so funny. So obviously, again, the original Zera Aaron, I never know how to pronounce that one. Jund Commander again, insect. I believe it's an insect wizard. I'm gonna try to get it all here. I think it's a 1/2. It's flying, and you pay a Jund red blue and a red green and a black and tap to draw a card. That's it. It just draws you a card. One of those commanders that it could be the commander for any deck, just because it just draws a card. I think it's actually target player draws a card, so you can actually force your opponents to draw if you want to. This one looks a lot different. So we got the Jund. It's an insect assassin now. Again, that art is hilarious. It looks like she's at like a ball or something. Man. 3/3 flying haste. So again, when I see the haste, like they don't do this stuff by accident. When you see lifelink on a commander, that probably means it's a life gain deck. When you see haste on a commander, that probably means it has an attack trigger. That's almost always they do that now. They're not going to give a commander haste unless there's something to do with attacking going on. When Zera, the Golden Sting, attacks, bam, put an egg counter on another target creature without an egg counter on it. Okay, so you're putting an egg counter on a creature that doesn't have one. When that creature dies, if it has an egg counter on it, draw a card and create. Okay, so we're doing the draw a card thing again, but in a much more interesting way, right? I like it too because again, great flavor here because she's an assassin. So what I imagine this is sort of like with Mathis, right? Fiend Seeker, what the hell's his name? There's a commander I haven't seen in forever. With the bounty thing, this is very similar, where she is. Is she actually injecting eggs into people? Because that's kind of weird. She's injecting an egg, and she is. Oh, that's kind of gross. So what she's doing, because she's like a giant wasp or something. Yeah, the Golden Sting. She's injecting an egg into people. That's how she's killing people, right? Because she's an assassin. So she injects an egg into people. Wow, the flavor here is incredible. The egg hatches, right? If you know anything about wasps, they do that a lot. There's this. I'm going off on a tangent here, but this video's almost over, so whatever. There's this wasp, this massive wasp somewhere in the desert that will paralyze like a tarantula and then lay its eggs inside the tarantula, and then the babies eat its way out. So definitely on flavor here. So yeah, she's injecting eggs into her victims. I assume the victims that she's been hired to assassinate. And then the egg is hatching, killing the person. And of course, you get your baby, which is the 1/1 black insect with flying, right? That's the wasp that is hatching. And also the draw card is probably the bounty that you're getting from killing it or something. Wow, so great flavor here. So she attacks. You put an egg counter on another creature without an egg counter on it. Obviously, you can't put the egg counter on herself. That would make no sense. So I'm glad they did that. So yeah, you can't put multiple egg counters on stuff. Yeah, it has to be separate creatures every time. So this might be a good deck to do, and again, just like with a Mathis deck, you want to put stuff like Forbidden Orchard in there, right? Because this is one of those decks where you want to guaranteed your opponents have creatures. Because if your opponents have creatures, it doesn't have creatures, it doesn't do anything. I guess you can put the egg counters on your own creatures. Yeah. You could. You could put the egg counters on your own creatures. That, I don't know, is a bit of a flavor fail. I guess you could kill your own creatures to get the eggs, but yeah, I guess you could do that. I would rather put it on my opponent's creatures, though, because, you could have a bunch of tokens out and then sack those tokens and draw cards, and yeah, that's good too, I guess. In fact, you could even put the egg counters on the insects that you just made. So you could put the egg counter on one of the insects that you just made, sacrifice that, get another one. I would rather make sure my opponents have creatures. So Mog Infestation's a great one there. That's my personal favorite, where I put some egg counters on my opponent's creatures. Then I destroy them all with Mog Infestation. I get my draw and my insect tokens. And then they get a bunch of goblin tokens that I can then put egg counters on, right? The one thing here is it's a little slow. I like that they gave it haste so that you can at least use it right away. So I put an egg counter on a creature, and then I think I would want, you might want to do Strionic Resonator here to get this, because it's a triggered ability. Copy it. Again, just like a Mathis, this is very similar to Mathis. I would put a Strionic Resonator in that deck as well, because just getting that one counter on every turn is really, really slow. So Strionic Resonator, you might even want to do extra combats here, because like Seize the Day would be a good one. I would probably put a Seize the Day in here, because then you can attack with your commander a couple times and spread the love, right? Put egg counters on a lot of different stuff. Yeah, interesting for sure. This is a funny one. This is one, I mean, that art is hilarious. I mean, she's just walking around with her big bug face and the hat on, trying to fit in. Forearms. This could be one that I go after, actually. After New Capenna, there's so many phenomenal Jund cards from New Capenna. It made me want to make a Jund deck, so this might be one I take a look at just for that reason. Very, very, very interesting. I like it a lot. All right, that's it. 5 more commanders. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, there's going to be more of these videos coming out, so stay tuned. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.